So a book will give you a lot of revenue, but indirectly, because it is a showcase for what you do. One of the things we did, Jackie and I, with the 7 failings of really useless leaders, I'm sure Stephen Covey's brilliant 7 habits of highly effective people. Another useful side tip here. If you're struggling for a title, put a number in it, put a number in the title. So Pat Lencioni, 5 dysfunctions of a team, 7 habits of highly effective leaders. Jackie and I rather cheekily wrote, not the 7 habits of highly effective people, but the 7 failings of really useless leaders. And, the first thing people are thinking is, have I got any of those? Sometimes people say, be positive, be uplifting. I think sometimes it's kind of neat to write about what we don't have, because have I got this problem? So in the 7 failings of really useless leaders, one of the things we did was actually put in the appendices a bunch of things positioned as resources, recommended resources. So basically there was a mentoring program, there was a coaching program, there was an AV program, a bunch of things, a couple of free resources as well, links to the podcast. The first thing your book will do is get you invited on stage. When you see on Graham Norton's show here in the UK or Steve Colbert's show in the US, everybody's touring with a book. So you write a book, you're going to get invited on stage to speak on stage. And I think this is something you've discovered in the US for sure. Am I right?
This came up through a couple of members were talking, and basically the advice had been, unless you write a book, you just won't end up on stage in the US because it's seen as a validator, etc. I've not been invited to speak in the US. I mean, I've spoken in Europe and South Africa and etc. But that's definitely anecdotal feedback. The US particularly like you to be a published author if you're going to be a keynote speaker.
Yeah. And so there's 2 things associated with this. One is, again, the book gets you noticed. So it's the visibility of the book. Let's take 2 steps back. Before we'd even written the 7 failings of really useless leaders, I wanted to speak on stage at the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development. Their HR conference in the UK, around about March, April time, is the biggest in Europe. So I, as a new leadership professor, wanted to speak at that. And I thought, well, what better way to see if this concept of the book resonates? And I rang them up and said, I've got a book coming out in about March, April. So it's going to be a brand new book. And it's not the 7 habits of highly effective people, but the 7 failings of really useless leaders. They said, sounds interesting. Tell us more. So I said, well, we know a lot about what good leadership is and what bad leadership is. And it's really about trying to show people that if you can stop doing certain things, you'll automatically become a better leader. I hadn't written a single word of the book by this stage. I was actually riffing in this call. They picked me for a keynote session at CIPD. So I said to Jackie, we have to sit down and write this now. We did it. The first book we'd written took a complete year of all of our time. We had to condense the process down to 6 months, and I had to continue doing my day job. So we suddenly learnt a real fact that was surprising to me, that you can streamline the book research and writing process. And maybe we'll touch on that later on. So this book took us 6 months. We ended up on stage at CIPD. I got paid for it, which I think is something else. Speakers in the professions, in the professional service firms, tend to think you speak on stage and you don't get paid. Once you have a book, you're automatically in that group of people, cadre, who are paid, and you do a keynote session. I got invited, because I was on the CIPD stage, SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Managers in Palm Springs, decided to invite me to speak. And that was, I think it was $20,000 for an hour's keynote.
Right.
So you're then on that roller coaster. So once you're seen on small scale peripheral events, you then get picked up by the bigger ones. So 7 Failings as a book generated some revenue, and I'll tell you how much exactly in a minute. But the bigger thing was it got me on stages. I got paid for those speeches. So an hour's keynote at 15 or 20,000 is the low end of paid keynotes.
Right.
You can consider getting an agent to help you with that, or a booking agency, but they will just take a chunk of that fee from you when actually the calls will come through to you anyway. So I don't think you need an agency, but if you want one, it kind of makes you look cool. That might be something you would consider. So I earned probably $40,000 for 2 hours of keynote that first launch year. But because we self-published this, we went to Cambridge University Press, who at the time outsourced their printing. And so we published it with them. We kind of white labeled it. So this book, which we were charging £25 a copy for in the hardback, cost me £2 to print. That is cheaper than a 4-color brochure. And yet it's sitting on somebody's shelf. So one of the real things I'm urging people to consider now is to self-publish, or to go with an agency who can help you to self-publish, because the economics become dramatic. So we sold 4,000 copies of this in the first week of launch. We got it to number 2 on Amazon because we took total charge of the marketing. And frankly, most publishers won't do marketing for you. You have to market yourself now. We actually pushed Richard Branson down off the top slot on Amazon. So I was really chuffed with that. He's never spoken to me since. So we sold 4,000 copies at £23 pure profit. I'll leave you to do the maths. So when you self-publish, or if you take charge of the publishing, the economics become very, very positive for you. So you can actually generate sales directly from the book, especially when you look at bulk sales, but it's downstream sales, speaking engagements, and the resources that you put in the back, serving your clientele. People absolutely love video training. AV, audio has far more value. So why would you put your entire life's work into a book, which has cost 20 quid, when actually a 3, 4, 5, 6 hour AV program or membership site will earn you far more? Those you can charge out at $1,000 for a training program, or $2,000. I paid $10,000 to attend somebody's seminar after reading their book.
Right.
Because I thought this woman has everything that I need to know about commercializing a particular project. So making money, not so much from the copies of sales, but I mean, this book funded 5 years of speaking on stages and training revenue. And I should have written something sooner than I did after that, because once that peak of 3, 4, 5 years hits, you then need to have something else in its place, and I didn't, so that was a mistake. So when we now write something every year if we can, certainly every 2 years, because it has such a commercial impact, because people are finding you, because people are persuaded that you know and can sort out their challenges. So yes, it is a really lucrative thing to do.
Thank you. So that was really comprehensive. And are you
telling me I'm speking too much? Should I give shorter answers? What are you telling me, Lee?
No, not at all. It's fascinating. So it in effect, what it's done is answer a question that we had ahead of time, which is a book not just a vanity project? Particularly for our community. But you're saying absolutely not, because it's not just about the book. It's about the longevity. It's about the fact that it's around for a long time. It generates other opportunities. It can be given away. It can generate referrals, etc., etc. So thank you for all of that. That's really, really good context. And we've touched on some of the commercials. So I guess the big bit in the middle, because I've got 3 main questions for you from my side, plus do ask questions of the audience as ever.
Absolutely.
So how do you go about then? So you've had this thing, I want to write a book. I'm going to commit to write a book. So how do you condition yourself in your busy working life, when you're seeing clients and you're generating business and you're dealing with staff issues? How do you go about writing a book?
So this is one of the weirdest questions I get, because you, Lee, are one of the busiest guys. You plan your life to within an inch of itself. You know exactly what you're going to be doing. if we can get this reason right, if we can get the sense of urgency right, then you will make the time. It's a concern people have, but until they've got that absolute nailed reason, why am I writing this? Because my clients are grappling with X, Y, or Z right now. The space clears itself. You'll stop watching Lost or Coronation Street or whatever project. You will make the time, but actually it is less time than you imagine.